long way since then. And then there's this.
At a minimum, we have to simplify our system, and I would like to see a reduction in taxes, and we have to simplify our system.
Reduction in corporate taxes or all
absolutely.
taxes? What?
A reduction in all taxes, but especially corporate and especially for the middle class.
The Donald asking you to read his lips on tax cuts, a big promise considering he's pushing some costly reforms. To the anti-tax crusader Grover Norquist on whether or not he's buying into this. Grover, are you going to get him to sign one of your no tax pledges?
Well, what he said, his position in that discussion was that he would oppose tax increases because he thought the problem was spending, which was the next point that he makes in that interview. That's entirely consistent with the pledge. I was very pleased that he's talking about tax reform. If we're going to compete internationally, we need to take the corporate rate down towards 20%, have full expensing, and do territorial. That needs to be done not in a tax increase, as Obama wants, but revenue neutral. So he was asking, when he was asked about the pledge, I want to keep this revenue neutral, not a tax increase. Exactly the right question, exactly the right answer. Tax reform has got to be not a Trojan horse for a tax increase.
And, you know, he said all taxes. He was very specific. He said a reduction in all taxes. Across-the-board tax cuts, the kind that Ronald Reagan had, that's what fueled the incredible energy in this economy back in the early to mid-'80s.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, I think there are a couple of things. He said we need to do tax reform, getting rates down. Absolutely true, to be competitive. But then he also said, and that's what the pledge is all about, but never let tax reform be a trick to raise total taxes. And he said he won't do that. Well, if you put that in writing, that's the pledge. So hopefully he'll feel comfortable signing the pledge. He just said it, in effect. Look, it is the default position of virtually all Republicans. It just takes a while sometimes for people to put it in writing, because that's a big commitment, should be viewed as a big commitment.
Well, some people are for elimination of the entire IRS. I mean, you have Mike Huckabee, who wants to go to a consumption tax. What do you think about that? Well,
that's a very interesting and bold position. He's also made it clear that he would never allow it to be an overall tax increase. So you can get to a consumption tax, which is what the fair tax, sales tax people want to do, simply by exempting investment and savings from taxable incomes. I'm more comfortable reforming the present system down than creating a parallel system, because something could happen. We could end up with both the income tax and a sales tax, VAT. And then we're France. That's what France is.
That's true.
France is America with a value-added tax, sales tax.
Yeah, and a lot of free market economists say you don't want a sales tax, a federal sales tax, because they can keep raising them so easily. But what about dumping the IRS? We have not only the problem with the IRS, in fact, people don't like pay so much to it, but you have all these scandals involving the IRS, the hacking that's involved in the IRS, and the fact that they operate totally contrary to the notion of you're innocent until proven guilty. With them, you're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah. What we have there is a combination of complete incompetence, no defense against hacking, and corruption. They were political corruption. They were targeting people who they didn't like for audits and to deny them tax status politically. When you talk to donors to the Romney campaign and other Republican donors, they're all getting whacked with audits. It's a real problem. It happened during the Clinton years. I served on the commission on restructuring the IRS. We had a mild version of what we have now back then, and the Clinton people were pulling the same game.
So isn't it, I mean, it's just whenever you have an institution like the IRS, no matter how many laws there are against using it as a political tool, politicians will find a way to use it as a political tool to go against their enemies. So shouldn't that be your next pledge, just getting rid of the IRS?
Well, I'm in favor of bringing taxes down to the point where you don't need a police state to enforce them, because they're not that high. But we can, I think, require transparency. What bothers me about the scandals during the Obama year in the IRS is there was no whistleblower. No whistleblower. Only people from the outside found out about this. Nobody inside said, I'm appalled, let me bring this to the New York Times' attention. That means the corruption goes very deep.
Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform. Good to see you, Grover. Thank you very much.